Up next, we have Josh. So Josh is a computer scientist and mathematician. He's the executive director of Metagov, lead at DAO Star, and a DPhil student at Oxford. His research focuses on applications of artificial intelligence to collective intelligence. And Bruce, you'll be coming up next. And also, speakers, if you could repeat the question when someone's asked, just so people at the back can hear it. To Josh.
Thanks, Connor. All right. So in the winter of 1956, Herbert Simon and his old student Alan Newell gathered together a small group of people in Simon's living room. My wife and 3 children, together with some graduate students, said Simon, and gave to each of these people a 3x5 index card. They then played a simple game. Dorothea, Simon's wife, sitting on the couch, would shout a message to Newell, who was standing by the door. Newell would then read his card and relay a message to one of Simon's daughters, Catherine or Barbara, and they in turn would relay a new message based on cards of their own. This game of message passing would go on and on until one of the cards said that the game was over. The resulting performance was the first run of what is arguably the first artificial intelligence program ever, the logic theorist. So the very first AI was a kind of performance, a game of make-believe between a group of people that encoded a set of relationships and interactions between them. It's not quite what we call an organization, but is it that far? Now, the logic theorist was a prime example of what we call a symbolic method in AI. And a symbolic method is a way of interacting with the world that represents the world through explicit variables. So things like logic, causal models, programming languages, search. In AI, a sub-symbolic method is a method of interacting with the world that does not seek to represent the world through explicit symbols and variables. So examples would be robots like Ronnie Brooks' Genghis that emphasize interacting directly with the world, statistical learning methods that represent the world through large unstructured data sets, or neural nets that encode features of the world in large parameter sets. So at this point, you might have guessed what I mean by a sub-symbolic organization. A sub-symbolic organization is an organization without any explicit representation or description, at least one that's accessible to humans. So that means no text, no contracts, no org chart, no explicit rules, but not necessarily no rules. Think of the Facebook newsfeed, or the platform formerly known as Twitter, or even a particularly chaotic Discord. These are interfaces, often powered by complicated AI underneath the hood, that mediate your interactions with a set of other people. They impose rules and conditions on those interactions, and you may be aware of some of those rules and conditions, but the vast majority you will never know. And by contrast, DAOs are symbolic organizations, even hyper-symbolic organizations. They're certainly more symbolic than comparable firms. When Maker votes on a governance parameter, they are really buying into a very explicit representation of their organization and how to interact with it. When Gitcoin deploys a governance token, they are articulating a very explicit form of power in that organization. This explicitness has consequences. As we all know, it is hard to change these parameters, or at least no less hard than it is in legal organizations. It is exhausting. I'm here in Stanford, so I'll quote Margaret Hagan here. It is more fun to craft the visual and human parts of policy. It is exhausting and contentious to get text exactly right. And this gives the lie that we tell ourselves in this room. Because we like to argue or claim that DAOs are a wonderful new paradigm for doing social science. And maybe that's true when we compare them with legal organizations. But DAOs are so far from being able to compete with the empirical paradigm in AI. So here's my challenge for you all. Maybe symbolic is bad. Maybe we don't need to expose all these parameters. Maybe we can design and run better governance systems faster if we got rid of all these explicit representations that only a few people really understand anyway. Code is great, don't get me wrong, but maybe we put all our code into the wrong basket. So earlier I talked about Facebook newsfeed and Twitter. These are examples of sub-symbolic organizations, sort of. Sort of insofar as these interfaces don't really encode organizational structure into their internal models. But what if they did? What if LinkedIn recommended tasks and matched your daily output into a set of collective decisions? What if GitHub replaced its entire permissions and role structure with an open-ended statistical model for merging PRs? What if Notion had a neural network that could generate a website on the fly that reflected the practices, structures, and incentives of an organization? What if we, as scientists, could intervene on an organization not by trying to change its rules and processes, but by intervening directly on an interface, an algorithm, or a data set? I'm not sure what would happen, to be honest. These experiments have yet to be built. But I and a few others will be starting a new lab in the fall to begin building some of these experiments. And if you're interested in collaborating, please let me know. With that, thank you.